Got excited. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. It is Tuesday, November 12th, 2019, and we have our fourth official guest speaker for Ideas, Chad McCallister. Yay! From Chad's Reviews, Chad's Prep. He has agreed to come talk to us about his experience in creating Chad's Reviews and kind of how that came about, his advice and suggestions for learning this material and understanding concepts, as well as answer questions that we have. Don't know if he was aware of how popular he is with ASU online students, so we told him. Prior to the recording, I asked how it came about that Chad's Reviews is free for ASU students, because it's a tremendous resource, and it's a tremendous resource. So, Chad, thank you for joining us.
Cool. Thank you for having me. And to answer that question, I'm currently manage the SMS Learning Resource Center. And before this was the School of Molecular Sciences, it was the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry. And starting in 2005, I started managing the Learning Resource Center. And I just started holding review sessions for general chemistry and organic chemistry primarily. And we actually had somebody from New Mexico come out, a department chair for another university over there, came out with one of his colleagues, and they were trying to figure out why, what are we doing that makes our attrition rate so low? Because they at the time at least, had a much higher attrition rate. And at some point they came to one of my review sessions, and they came and talked to me afterward, and they're like, so who teaches you how to teach like this? And is there a class for it? And what do you guys do? And I'm like, I just do it. I don't know. I didn't know what to tell them and stuff. But it made me feel bad. And it made me think, I wish I could make a recording of these and make them available to students across the country. And so that's kind of where it started. And I realized that, you guys as ASU students have free access to stuff. But the Gen Chem, the OChem, the physics videos, they're all on YouTube as well. Everybody's got access to the videos. I'm making more and more practice materials available for free on top of that for ASU students. And most of that is what I, market for a nominal fee to students across the country outside of ASU.
They're very cool. They're very helpful, and they are very well loved. So thank you for that.
Awesome. You're totally welcome.
Do you want to share with the group some of your background as far as how you got into this, how you got involved with the Learning Resource Center?
Well, I'll let you know that it's not exactly a straight line path. It was definitely not where I thought I was headed. And, I actually graduated from ASU with a degree in biochemistry back in 1998. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go. And I just started taking some extra classes and building up a background. And I finally decided I'm either going to grad school or I'm going to med school. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do, so I took the MCAT and I took the GRE. And finally, I just kind of weighed out, the pros and cons for each one. And I finally decided on grad school. And I got 2 years through grad school, and I just had another change of heart. And honestly, I actually dropped out of grad school halfway through my PhD. And I was just like, I just want to make a difference in this world. And I really honestly thought I was probably going to some third world country to do what I could and things of that sort. And it never really quite materialized that way. And, but I just said, well, I can't expect just to be ready to go, like dedicate my life to helping people in some third world country if I can't do it here first. And so I just started helping students and doing what I could. And the department hired me as a teaching assistant, and I just started holding extra review sessions for students. And eventually the department was like, just decided to turn it into a full-time position and gave me a job. It was so, you could say that dropping out of grad school was a great career move for me. Not exactly a straight line path, and not where I thought I was headed and stuff like that. But that definitely led me here, and I've got no complaints.
So you were hired as a TA through the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry, which is the predecessor to SMS, if I understand that correctly?
Correct.
And when you were involved with the Learning Resource Center, was that as part of its formation, or was it already an existing program when you came on?
It was already an existing program when I came on, and actually, I originally just worked as a tutor in the Learning Resource Center, and the laboratory coordinator at the time actually managed it. but he was a busy guy. I mean, the department was a very different entity back then and much smaller. And so in addition to being like a laboratory coordinator, he wore a lot of hats. And so he would hire undergraduates to work in the tutoring center, and he'd pop his head in maybe twice a semester just to make sure things were going okay. And we just kind of, did our thing down there and tried to make it as helpful a place as possible. And uh, like I said, eventually I just was helping students as a teaching assistant later on. And they're like, hey, we would like it if you just kind of did this in a very formal role. And so they created this position to manage the tutoring center. Before that, I just had student workers, but no manager. And it's worked out really well. I would venture to say, and I'm probably biased, but I think we're one of the more helpful learning resource centers on campus. But it's very informal. You can just walk in and get help. And I feel bad for you guys in the online program because you can't just walk into the tutoring center and get help. And but I know you guys are in contact with Ara as well, and so you might be familiar. And if you're not, you'll probably be familiar soon that we're to try and get a Slack channel going for you guys next semester. So I'll be involved with that, but also a number of others and stuff like that. So hopefully we can get some resources your direction. But I'm also planning on putting some new stuff up on Chad's reviews in terms of practice materials this next semester. I'm contemplating even switching the platform to a different one with a little better functionality. So we'll see with that. But so I'm not completely ignoring you guys. I'm totally thinking about you guys as well. So, but yeah, one of the big initiatives is to try and figure out how best we can also help the online students and to give them some more opportunities to get some access to help.
That's incredible. Your video series is a huge jumping off point as it is. And I can only imagine its usability as you continue to improve the software or add practice tests, I think is what you were talking about. So question, the videos where you're with students, those were filmed in the LRC?
No, the vast majority of the videos were actually filmed at my church, which is about 1.5 miles from campus. And I just rented out the fellowship hall and invited a bunch of students to come and be a part of it. And, it's one of those things that it's just engaging when there's actually students there. And sometimes I have to edit out a few things if I think a student's question may not be beneficial at large, although beneficial to them. Sometimes I'll edit those out and stuff like that. And, but things of that sort. So then sometimes, I think it's just annoying to have to watch me erase the whiteboard and stuff like that. So I'll edit that out. But I think it's very engaging to actually have it with students. Always possible, and it's not always feasible, and it's kind of expensive, but it's nice when it works out that way.
We would not have had the iconic whiteboard marker versus ice pick conversation with the students if you hadn't done it in front of a group.
So, obviously I can make it a little lighthearted at times when I can. I think if you can be 90% instructor and 10% entertainer, you can kind of keep students' attention. So if I can put a funny story in there or a stupid story, and I've got a few of those, or a dad joke, I've got some of those too. If I can just make it ridiculous or funny or whatever, just make it memorable in any way, shape, or form, but also hold your attention maybe a little bit longer than normal. Usually I try and accomplish that. So.
As a quick reminder to anybody watching, if you want to drop questions into the chat box and we will go over them as well. Okay, so a few questions that we had. What is the biggest mistake that you see students make when they're studying?
Biggest mistake students make when they're studying. It's kind of a twofold mistake, not being organized in their studies, and kind of tied in with that, not doing enough practice. And especially, here I'm the one making videos and stuff like that, but doing practice problems is by far the absolute most important thing you can do, hands down. So if you're not doing enough practice, if you have a choice of working some practice problems or watching some of my videos, it's an easy choice. Just do a bunch of practice problems. If that's all you got time for. My goal in the videos really is to give you a good foundation, a good launching point to go do a bunch of practice problems. That's my goal. But, from a lecture, at the end of the day, you're only going to learn so much. And the truth is the vast majority of learning will happen when you actually work practice problems, and you'll find out things you did understand and things you thought you understood, but didn't really have as great a handle on as you thought you might have and stuff. But if you're not working enough practice problems, really you want to treat chemistry as much like a math class as possible. And you learn math by just doing problems, and really chemistry is no different.
Your videos, I think one of the reasons that they are unique is you tend to address a lot of really common misconceptions as you're teaching the material at the same time. And one that comes to mind is actually in your physics series, where you list off all the different things that they use K for as a variable and how they are not related at all. But it's helpful. Things like that are helpful, that students don't realize they're confused until they're already past it. Do you see common topics like that that's just like that, students are going to get stuck on just based on the material that's already available to them, or just how it goes?
Sure. So, one of the huge advantages I feel like I have is I've worked in the tutoring center for 20 years now. And so I help students one-on-one, I help students in small groups. I have the large scale review sessions. Before I got married, I probably worked 70 or 80 hours a week, for 10 years. And, just spending so much time with students, I get a good idea of where a lot of students struggle. I definitely struggled myself as a student back in the day. So I get some some relations there, but I definitely get to see where a lot of students struggle. I get to see, new ways of explaining things and what connects with many people, what connects with not so many people. And I try to bring that out in my videos, but I also see, where students are going to make the most common mistakes. If you're doing the Arrhenius equation, I can be like, yeah, so a lot of students don't convert either R or the activation energy both to joules or both to kilojoules, and, things of that sort. And so I just kind of give students a heads up so that when they get to the problem, if they do make that mistake, hopefully they're like, oh yeah, Chad told me not to do this. And the hope is that, you can make those mistakes on your own practice, and not make them on the actual exam.
Yeah, units trip up a lot of people. You can know that they're there, but they still manage to sneak up on you. Do you find that there's a best way to take notes for these subjects, chemistry versus physics? Because these are 100 level courses, so a lot of times people get into the course and they haven't taken a science before, or they have, but it's very different.
Notes are a tough one, and they're obviously a little bit of a personal thing as well, and people have different styles. And with technology being what it is today, I actually like taking digital notes. I'll put that out there, and if, a lot of students actually get all the way through a set of my videos and they're like, you have outlines like taped up next to the board. Where do I get those? And they are the first lesson at the beginning of every course. And if you should really download those, and they're really just a place where you can take notes, and to help you take notes and facilitate those note taking. So, but as far as, a style and stuff like that of taking notes, I was one of those guys that took 2 sets of notes. I was one who was just frantically writing while in class. And then if I had the option, I would actually, as soon thereafter as I could, go back and take a nice organized set of notes afterwards. I found actually the process of making the organized set of notes was actually probably where more learning ever happened than actually going back and reviewing those notes, oddly enough. But that I found, taking it on the fly while you're in class, and, especially, if your teacher goes back and, oh, I forgot to add this and I forgot to say this, and then things are out of order and, things of that sort. So, that's what I found, is just taking 2 sets of notes. It's time consuming. But it worked for me.
Online students have a little bit of a silver lining in that way, because our lectures are recorded. So we can go back and rewatch them as many times as we want, or pause and rewind 15 seconds if we missed a word. We don't have to have that same one shot at it.
Yep.
Which is nice. But there are pros and cons to both styles, of course, but in that way. One of the questions we have from Baja, is there a Chad's Review app?
There is not a Chad's Reviews app. I talked of possibly switching platforms for next year. And one of the things fueling that is switching to a platform that actually provides its own app. And that's a possibility. Having a Chad's Reviews app would be nice. Obviously there's certain functionality and you can take it anywhere, yada, yada. But from a marketing perspective, it's great because, you can enable push notifications and contact people on their phones and tablets and stuff. But from a student perspective, though, if the app actually allows you to, download a course and then watch it offline, I think that has huge value from a student's perspective.
For the online students as well, there are quite a few that multitask. And by that, I mean people that are working, or they listen to lectures while they commute. These things that kind of allow online students to maximize their time. There's a lot of interest in offline lectures, and even in courses that I've been with students asking to download it because they're traveling or whatnot. And it's a definitely functionality there.
Yeah. Do you guys get any of that functionality with ASU Online? Can you access things offline at all?
If the professors allow it. So in
Okay.
OChem in particular, did they use Vimeo for, no, they used some, I'm trying to remember now. It was an embedded link, I believe. And Dr. Gould would go through each week and make them downloadable, which was
Okay.
amazing.
So that's the hard part, from a downloadable perspective. Obviously you're just kind of releasing it to the masses, and
Mhm.
that can be a little dangerous. And also, if you're trying to protect your intellectual property, it can be a nightmare. But that's what's nice about an app as well, is because in an app they typically get downloaded in an encrypted form, and you can only actually watch it through the app. And so the creator feels protected, and yet the students are getting the functionality they want.
I would imagine that also allows that if you make changes, you can control that only the latest version is being released to students, so you don't have confusion as well.
For sure.
Well, that leads me on to another question, which is that what was it like to create a business from this experience?
It has definitely had its ups and downs. I was uh, definitely never one to want to actually create my own business, if you will. And it wasn't exactly in the plan. It just kind of unfolded in a weird way. When the recession hit and stuff like that, like everybody else around the country, my family, had its struggles, and uh, various members of my family were unemployed and at different times and things of this sort. And so everybody in the family was just looking for different ways to, maybe make a little extra money here and there and stuff like that. And so it just very naturally turned into a business and stuff. And it's definitely had its highs and its lows. Um, a lot of people kind of have the impression that, oh, if you can own your own business, that's the best of any possible, outcome and stuff like this. And I think a lot of people that think that probably have never owned their own business. But it's a lot of work. I've heard it's put that owning your own business is the only job where you're willing to work 80 hours a week and only get paid for 40. Um, and there's a lot of truth to it. There's something to be said for being able to clock in, clock out, get your paycheck, and not take your work home with you. Um, but right now, between ASU and my online activities, I work a lot, but I also take the summers off, and only do my online stuff during the summers. Um, but the truth is, I just like interacting with students. And so when I spend all summer long, much of the time in my office, working on things and making little lectures and screen capture videos and things of this sort, by the time August rolls around, I'm ready for school to start back up.
So this would be a bad time then to segue into the question of, have you considered expanding your coursework?
I have considered expanding my coursework. So right now, I'm looking at redoing the biochemistry series. That is in the works for starting in the spring. Um, I'm considering somewhere down the road remaking the OChem. I love the newest set of curriculum I made for OChem, but a lot of students are like, I just missed the whiteboard, Chad. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe we'll have some fun. In fact, you can behind me see the whiteboard I just erected here in my office, which just gives me a little bit of flexibility. It won't be as engaging because there won't be any students with me, but I think a lot of students I feel like I'm in a classroom when it's on the whiteboard. I'm like, okay. So this last year, I also released some DAT and OAT practice exams, and they're currently available for free and stuff like that. But eventually, I'm looking at a set of GRE math videos. I'm looking at Bio 181 and 182, a series for genetics, all things that are in the works in the next 2 years.
That's impressive, particularly after you listing off what you are currently trying to manage just with what you already are maintaining.
I missed the very beginning of that. Sorry.
Oh, I said that's impressive.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I actually heard that. I just wanted to hear you say that it's impressive again.
The real reason you need students in your classroom, right?
That's right. It's all an ego thing.
No, your lecture style, I have to imagine, is still going to be as effective even without students in there, because you talk to the students. I don't know, it doesn't feel like a lecture. It feels like I'm having a one-on-one conversation and you're explaining what I didn't know I needed explained, which is, I don't know that it's something that can be taught well, that style.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny. I think that I think I think there's something innate about being a good teacher that's possible, but I also think there's definitely skills and stuff that anybody can pick up in doing instruction and stuff like that. So I think there's room for improvement everywhere, and the amount of knowledge in educational psychology out there is off the charts, and I find that I turn into a better instructor every year.
How did you come about creating your content to match the professors? Because that's also unique. And maybe that's just because we're within ASU, so I can notice that. But like your original Chad's reviews, when you would go on and pick your subject, you could pick your subject based on the order in which your professor taught it.
Yeah, so it used to be, our Gen Chem curriculum is actually pretty standard. And I know I talked to Dr. Kabarak, and he is teaching it in a slightly different order for second semester. So I'm going to actually release a new course for the spring that kind of matches up with that, and things of that sort. But for OChem, both, at ASU traditionally and all across the country, textbooks and professor to professor, even at the same university, often will follow a completely different curriculum, especially in the first semester. Once you get to the second semester, and you got, okay, now it's alcohol, now it's ethers and epoxides, now it's aromatic compounds, and a lot of that's the same. But I was just helping a student who's in one of my online classes on Chad's Prep recently, and he actually had to show me his curriculum. He's like, where do I find a chapter on this? And I looked at the chapter and I was like, I actually don't have a chapter on that at all. It's actually, there's pieces of that in 6 different chapters, and I had to go give him a set of videos and stuff like that. And but that's one thing too, is when I got to OChem, for Gen Chem, I'd hold 1 big review session before every exam. For OChem, I found myself holding 3, and just unique for each professor. But as of late, actually, everybody's starting to adopt at least a pretty similar curriculum on campus. And obviously for the online courses, you have pretty much one option as an instructor, I believe, or maybe 2 actually, and some tag teaming going on maybe. But one real curriculum, and that makes it easy. And the fact that it's Dr. Gould's curriculum on campus, they're all starting to follow that as well, which is going to make my job a lot easier in making a new set of videos and things of that sort. So, but across the U.S., every textbook's a little bit different, or in some cases, more than a little bit different. There's a cool company called Clutch Prep, and that's kind of their little niche. Is they make tutoring videos and stuff like that that are specifically tailored to your textbook. So when you sign up for their course and make a purchase, you actually have to tell them which textbook you want it tailored to. And they've got it all arranged in every different order possibly imaginable for, 15 different OChem textbooks.
Wow.
So it's interesting little niche, and it's a cool idea. And I looked at it and I said, that's really cool. And I will never, ever have the time to do that.
It is really cool, but it's still limited on whether or not your professor teaches to the book.
That is definitely true as well. And if you notice, obviously if you're in Gould's class, you don't really have a book, you have his notes and stuff like that. But typically, in a textbook, they won't cover all the spectroscopies until chapters like 14, 15 in a lot of textbooks. But a lot of professors will opt to include it, somewhere in mid to late first semester. Whereas normally I think the textbook's designed for it to be like, kind of beginning a second semester or something along those lines. But, so it's one of those things that a lot of professors kind of jump around even in the textbook they've adopted.
Yeah. We are pretty much universally fans of Dr. Gould's system, both of teaching, the gap notes, and the homework system. And
yeah, you're not alone. He's a pretty popular dude.
Yeah. As a person, very much so, but also just as a style of teaching. It's unique and it's effective for a lot.
I also sometimes just wish I had a British accent. I think that would make it better as well.
Yeah. It's
a Bond.
Although there was many of us that are in this meeting right now took it in spring of 2019, and they were working, he re-uploaded a couple videos, and they were working on getting the official transcribing done. So we had automatically generated transcripts for a little bit for captions. Could not make heads or tails of his accent. It was quite entertaining.
I had a student ask who was deaf, and asked if I, was going to make transcripts, and I do want to, and obviously YouTube will make some automatically for you and things of that sort. But in the science and tech world, they're not always very true to what you're trying to say. And I went and priced it out, and it was going to be somewhere in the $6,000 to $12,000 range to have all my videos transcribed. And I was like, okay, we'll do that down the road somewhere. So it's a little pricey, but especially in the technical areas, finding somebody who will transcribe it who actually understands a little bit of general chemistry or organic chemistry is very difficult.
Yeah, even enough just to get the terms, even if the capitalization isn't right, just enough that you can follow it. Does anybody have any questions? You can drop them in the chat as well. We had a couple questions on the Facebook group as well, specific to studying for the MCAT,
Sure.
which you spoke about developing coursework along those lines as well coming up.
Anything in particular you want me to say about the MCAT, or do you want me to kind of address it generically? Or
I think it was kind of a general question about if you had any suggestions for effective ways to study for the MCAT. Excuse me.
Sure. And I didn't know exactly where the questions had come. I made a little presentation on just how to study for an admissions test in general, but I can actually talk about the MCAT a little bit specifically. So how many of you guys are actually thinking of possibly the health professions, and specifically maybe medicine? So at least a couple of you. So the MCAT's this really fun experience in life where you say goodbye to all your friends for 3 to 6 months and cry a lot. It's kind of how it works, but it is a tough test, and we talked about what are some of the common mistakes students make when studying, and the single biggest one when it comes to the MCAT is I see students who are just not organized in their studies. I mean, the amount of structure you need in your studies is through the roof. A lot of students go into it and be like, I just need to study a lot and then I'm going to go take a test. And you need to have a much better plan than that, to the point where I actually recommend students, figure out, okay, here's your test day. You're going to set aside 3 or 4 months or 5 months or 6 months and actually set up a calendar. That way you could know that in 3 weeks on a Tuesday, I'm going to be studying acids and bases, kind of a thing. A pretty rigid schedule. And it doesn't mean you're going to keep it perfectly, but it is going to mean that you need to try. But a lot of students just don't realize how much studying they need to do. And they just kind of I'm just waking my way through a Gen Chem book right now. And but if you don't know, if you kind of haven't all laid out exactly what needs to be done in the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months, you don't actually even know up front if you're even going to have time to finish. You don't know if you're on pace and things of this sort. But studying for the MCAT, just being as structured as you can, hit studentdoctor.net. They've got some great study plans and stuff like that. And you find one that you like, it's for 2 months. Well, and you're like, well, but I'm taking 4. Well, then great. Take each day and divide it in half and make it a 4-month study plan or something like that. But there's some great ones out there, and if you're not one to self-study and you want to take a prep course, go take a prep course. They're really good at giving you a study plan and giving you some structure and things of that sort. And even if you don't take a prep course, you definitely need to get somebody's practice materials. And fortunately for you guys as ASU students, I don't know if you guys are aware of this online. I'm going to guess there's a really good chance you are, because it's a really amazing deal. But ASU has partnered up with Princeton Review. Specifically for the MCAT, you can take their self-paced course for free. There's a couple stipulations. You got to take it within a year, and you got to be willing to post your scores and things of this sort. But that's absolutely free. And there's discounted courses for the DAT and the OAT, some other stuff for the LSAT and the GRE, all through Princeton Review. And it's a phenomenal deal. I would say on campus, more students are using Princeton Review because of this than any other resource. And it's like one of those things, well, I prefer Kaplan or I prefer Exam Crackers or whatever. And I'm like, do you prefer it enough to spend $2,000 or, things of that sort? And the truth is, I just don't. I would use Princeton Review in a heartbeat if I got the self-paced course for free. If you're one who needs a little more structure than a self-paced course, well, okay, go consider taking one in person and things of a sort. And you still get a discounted price, I believe. Don't quote me on that. Well, I say don't quote me on that. It's recorded, I realize. But I believe, you'll get a discounted price on even an in-person course and stuff like that. I will give you this one caveat. Even if you take an in-person course or a self-paced course, just realize what you're paying for. You're not paying for the instruction. And a lot of students think that's the most important thing of any prep course. And the most important thing of any prep course is still the practice. It is absolutely the materials. That is where all the value is. And you think it's about the instruction and stuff like that. But again, most of your learning is going to take place when you're working passages and problems and things of the sort. So take advantage of those resources, but like I said, lay it out from day one. Make sure you know when your test day is and when you will be completing your studies, and lay it out crystal clear exactly what you're doing day by day.
Thank you for that. The nice thing about the Princeton review too is that it is available to online students. And while there are a lot of resources at ASU that are open to online students, it doesn't necessarily mean it's accessible to online students because it requires an in-person component. So it's a neat program, and appreciate you bringing it up here as well. You mentioned a presentation for general study tips.
Yeah. So how do I share my screen with you here?
Should be along the bottom bar. It's a little green box with an arrow.
Little green box with an arrow. Oh, let's see here. Ah, there it is. I had to expand my screen. So let's see if we can do this.
Excellent.
Oh, what do you guys see here?
We see your PowerPoint.
Fantastic.
Actually, we see your entire screen.
Fantastic. Now you hopefully just see the presentation?
Yes.
Sweet. So I was going to show you a handful of things. In fact, you know, I'm not even going to put this in presentation mode just yet. But Chad's reviews, I was going to introduce myself and which one of the following is false. I once decorated a car with Vaseline and hair. I can do the splits, or I once made a student think she had severed my bicep tendon for a week. Any thoughts on which one of those might be false?
Splits.
So number two, I got a lot of number twos. So here's the unfortunate news is like 4 years ago, that still would have been true. And now I have no desire to even try and ever do the splits again. I'm pretty sure I'm 43 and I just don't think that would go well. So, but 4 years ago, it would have been true. And now I just don't have the courage to find out if it's still true. But the other two are definitely true. So yes, I can no longer do the splits is kind of the official standpoint I'm going for. Don't want to find out if it's true or not. But I definitely decorated a car with Vaseline and hair. Somebody made the mistake of crossing me. And I also made a student think she had severed my bicep tendon for a week and finally let her know on April 1st that it was all a big prank. It was hilarious.
How did she think you had severed her tendon?
Yeah.
Your tendon.
So I don't know if you've ever seen like a monkey bump thing and somebody like squeezes your bicep and pinches it or something and it's supposed to like make it bump, like oscillate or something or twitch or I don't know. It didn't work, needless to say, but on her way out of the tutoring center that day, she also patted me on the back and said, "See you later, Chad. Have a good night." And 3 hours later, I'm helping a student, and the student's like, "Hey, Chad, there's something on your back." And I was like, thought she meant a bug. I'm like looking back real quick, and it wasn't a bug, and it was a Post-it note that says, "I love men." So needless to say, I went home, and I was living with my brother at the time, and he had separated his shoulder, and oddly enough, he just separated his shoulder again. But he had separated his shoulder and was finally fully healed after 6 weeks. And I saw his sling lying around, and I went to school the next day in a sling, and it turned into a week-long April Fool's prank. It was pretty funny. It was good times, and there's a much longer story to that, and I'll share that some other time.
Required some solid commitment there.
Yeah. It was supposed to be a one-day thing until I realized halfway through that day that April 1st was the following week. So
you committed yourself.
I did. It was great. It's the best April Fool's prank I've ever seen, and I created it on accident, so it was great. Cool. I was going to give a little more info, but I think I've really covered all of those things. I did just want to give a plug for Chad's reviews to ASU students and just show, hey, you do have free access to all this stuff. And you guys seem well acquainted, so I won't say more, but there's, Gen Chem, OChem, even elementary OChem, PChem, Biochem, physics, and hopefully more coming soon. And like I said, it might be restructured for the spring.
You should feel free to go into much detail as you'd like, because the people who are here are familiar, but we have a student population of new students, older students. Go for it.
Exactly. And my hope is that, Dr. Kabarak definitely gives me a good plug here and there. So my hope is that, students get introduced pretty early and stuff like that to these videos. But like I said, I'm trying to make them as accessible as I can, even outside of ASU. And like I said, the Gen Chem, the OChem, and the physics are all on YouTube. I was going to put the PChem and the Biochem there as well, but I'm trying to start upgrading those and refilm them. So I was like, well, I'll wait to put them on YouTube until I've redone them. But they are still available on chadsprep.com. as we'll see as well. But I'm also going to be adding more practice quizzes and potentially practice exams, diagnostic tests in the coming year as well. And like I said, there's also a lovely YouTube channel where you can get access to all of my, this bar is right where I want it. There we go.
You can click and drag the bar out of your way as well.
There we go. But on the YouTube channel, like I said, you can watch the entire series of organic chemistry, general physics, general chemistry, and hope to add more next year as well. Also wanted to give a quick plug for Chad's Prep. And Chad's Prep also has all 5 of my standard courses available free of charge, no sign up even required. Gen Chem, OChem, Physics. And the nice thing about watching them here instead of on YouTube is just the way they're organized. And I've got it structured in a nice, with a nice course menu. So you can just kind of go find the chapter you need on gases, for instance, and go watch just that video lesson and things of that sort. So I just want to plug those ever so briefly. So like I said, I'm working hard not just to help ASU students, but really just to help students all across the country.
Is there a difference in content between Chad's Reviews and Chad's Prep? Or do you direct students to both?
So I direct ASU students to Chad's Reviews because I tailor everything specifically to the courses students are taking, and specifically on campus. But like I said, I'm actually going to restructure my Gen Chem in the spring to also have an online version, so it matches the order in which Dr. Cabrat goes there and stuff as well. So it gives me control on Chad's Reviews so that I can really tailor it to the curriculum you guys are getting as ASU students. There's also more practice materials available at Chad's Prep and things of that sort. I will say that being that it's the majority of my income and stuff like that, I worry about Chad's Prep before I worry about Chad's Reviews, sorry. So it gets, new content and stuff like that before Chad's Reviews does. But I definitely, usually add quite a bit in between semesters and during the summer. Oh, there's a quick plug. I have DAT and OAT practice exams that are currently available free of charge. Probably will remain free of charge for a while longer and things of that sort. But I did want to talk about preparing for an admissions test. So just some general things, and a couple of these we definitely covered in terms of structure and stuff like that. But a lot of students don't realize I used to teach a course, Chem 191 for chemistry majors. And basically it was just an introductory course for incoming freshmen to help them adjust to university life and to really succeed in the university. And I found that 70% of our incoming chemistry majors were actually looking at going into the health professions. And so I would talk about, what does it look like to go to grad school, and what does it look like to go to medical school and dental school and pharmacy school and optometry school and stuff like this. And I tell a lot of students that if you're not already, planning some steps out and stuff like that, then you're already behind, even as a freshman. And it's not the kind of thing where, I hear this quite regularly. I hear students in their senior year be like, well, Chad, I'm thinking about going to medical school. And I'm like, not next year, you're not. And they don't realize they've already missed it. They don't realize all the hoops they need to jump through. And it's really going to take them 1 or 2 years to get to a point where they can even apply. And they're just not even at a point to realize that. But, if it's so competitive these days and so many hoops they do want you to jump through. And if you want to go to dental school or medical school or one of the others, you've really got to get started in your freshman and sophomore year, putting some of those things in place. And, if you want to do well on your DAT or your OAT or your MCAT and stuff like that, first thing I'd recommend is just do well in your prereqs. Don't shoot to get, I just need to be in the class, or I just need to get the lowest A that I can or something. Really shoot for mastering the course material. If you learn it well the first time, it'll make it easier to learn the second time. And anybody studying for the MCAT or the DAT or something like that, they're learning a huge number of concepts a second time. There's just only so much you're going to retain from your classes. But if you learned it really well the first time, it'll be much easier to learn the second time. Also highly recommend that you take your science prereqs before taking your admissions test. I get a lot of students who be like, Chad, I haven't had a chance to have physics and I just really need to get this MCAT out of the way. And you can pull it off, don't get me wrong. But like I said, these tests are so competitive and you want to give yourself every possible advantage and limit any disadvantage. And if you're trying to take one of these admissions tests before having one of your science prereqs that's being tested upon on that test, like I said, I've seen students do it successfully. I just don't think it's the ideal situation. And if you can avoid that, you're best off to do it. And that's why you really want to, plan out your path ahead of time. Also, if you can develop good study habits in your prereqs, it'll make studying for the MCAT that much easier. A lot of students don't realize just how much is really involved in studying for the MCAT, and the study habits and the structure and the diligence, and waking up every morning and studying whether you feel like it or not. They just don't know all that's involved. And I actually have a friend that is a professor in a Caribbean medical school. And he says probably, somewhere in the ballpark of 40–50% of his students actually make it to med school in the Caribbean without having good study habits. And he said that's probably the biggest shortcoming for students that get to the Caribbean. And I don't know if those are students who decided not to take the MCAT or didn't do so well on the MCAT, but study habits are huge. And if you can develop those in your prereqs, you're already a step ahead. Also, way ahead of time, if you can work on your reading comprehension skills, and whether that's, for the CAR section of the MCAT or just those, sections for the DAT or OAT, this is huge. If I asked you all to raise your hands and say, who loves to read and has always loved to read since they were a little kid, I would guess that maybe half the hands might consider going up or something like that. I actually didn't learn to love to read till I was 25 years old. I don't know what was wrong with me up until that point, but I love TV and video games. What can I tell you? But you definitely want to work on those reading comprehension skills. And that just involves doing some extracurricular reading and not just, picking up the latest, page turning novel or something like that, but maybe some classic literature or reading some little more scholarly works like The Economist or something like that. But just make reading on a regular basis, things that are somewhat scholarly, just part of your normal routine. You can definitely improve your reading comprehension while you're studying for the MCAT or while you're studying for the DAT or OAT or something like this. But it's so much easier if you're doing it gradually over time, just kind of naturally as you just read some more scholarly works. Oh, let's see. How do we advance this slide from here? There we go. All right. You definitely want to plan ahead. And like I said, you definitely want to set this up ahead as far as you can. And first thing you need to know is just, when do you even need to take your admissions test? And, if you want to go into medical school, for instance, typically they open up their enrollment period or their application cycle, I should say, at the beginning of June, the year before you want to get in. And that means you really want to have taken your MCAT ideally 4 weeks before that. That way they get 4 weeks to grade it. And they, therefore day one, June 1st, you've got your application in, your MCAT's already been submitted, the scores there have been reported, and you're good to go. That gives you the best possible odds of getting accepted. A lot of schools will do rolling acceptance and stuff like that. So you can apply later in the cycle, but the later you do, the more students have already been accepted and the fewer spots there are left, and you're giving yourself less and less of a chance. And I'm not saying you can't push it back a little bit later in the summer and not still have a good shot. I'm just saying your best possible chance is if you get your application completed at the beginning of June. And the DAT and the OAT, or I should say the DAT, is on a similar schedule. The OAT is a little bit further back and stuff, but as soon as you can get with your application complete and your score submitted, the better off you are. And with the DAT, a lot of students think, oh, I get my score right when it's finished. The MCAT, they usually take 4 weeks to take, just to grade it. But with the DAT, your score shows up on the screen right when you finish. However, it takes roughly 4 weeks for them to report it as part of your application. So you still want to get it taken ahead of time. Also, if you're looking then, if you want to get your application on June 1st, it really means you're looking to take the MCAT, let's say, at the end of April. And if you're taking it at the end of April, that probably means you're studying all spring long and all Christmas break and things of this sort. And so if you can plan ahead of time to have a lighter course load for that spring semester, that's kind of ideal. And so, whether that means taking a couple of summer courses the previous summer or something like this, but if you haven't planned ahead, that's not even an option. You're just kind of like, and a lot of students end up just pushing the MCAT back into that summer. And again, the further you push it back into that summer, the lower your chances of getting an acceptance. Cool. And I'm not averse to saying maybe we'll just take the MCAT in mid-June. It's not as ideal, but you still have a pretty reasonable shot at getting in as long as your MCAT score is good. And so a lot of students will ask me, well, Chad, when should I take, the MCAT and stuff like that? And the absolute best answer is to take it when you're ready to take it. If you're going to take it at the end of April and not do so well, or you're going to take it in the middle of June and do pretty decent, well, then you should take it in the middle of June. But if you can set yourself up to do pretty decent and take it at the end of April, that's the ideal scenario. You definitely got to have a plan. And we kind of harped on this a little bit. And I like this quote: if you don't have a plan, then you're planning to fail. Um, but a lot of students don't know what's involved. But I highly recommend that you spend 3 to 6 hours a day for anywhere from 2 to 6 months. The MCAT's a little bit more difficult and challenging of a test, and so it usually takes a little more time for the average student. And then also a lot of look, the variability here is pretty significant, 2 to 6 months, and it really depends on you as a student. If you feel like you're a little stronger and like, hey, I just took OChem and I just took physics, so when I'm studying for the MCAT, those are pretty fresh. Well, then it might take you less time to prepare for the MCAT and stuff like that. But maybe you're non-traditional and you're like, I took Gen Chem 10 years ago, and then you might have to relearn quite a bit of it from scratch. You're probably going to be closer to the 5 or 6 month range rather than the 2 or 3 month range. And obviously, you can spend more than 3 to 6 hours a day and things of a sort. And in fact, most students actually, as the test time is winding near, are going to spend, probably 8 or 10 hours a day rather than 3 to 6. But this is kind of what I typically see students doing well with. 3 to 6 hours a day for 2 to 6 months. You definitely want to make sure you schedule a regular day off, though. This is a marathon of a test. And like I said, I was talking to one of the students I know fairly well, and I asked her, so how often did you cry while studying for the MCAT? And I didn't ask her, did you cry? I said, how often did you cry? And she did quite well. And so I was thinking it would be kind of less than normal, but she's like, at least once a week. So it's a lot of stress, so definitely schedule some time off as well. If you hit it 7 days a week, you're going to burn out at some point. Also, this middle one is one of my favorites. Schedule time for regular exercise. Endorphins are your friend. If regular exercise is not a part of your normal activities, you need to make it part, especially while you're studying for the MCAT. I think it's a good recipe for just a happy life as well in general. It just helps you manage stress. Those endorphins really do make you feel better, and you're going to need all the feeling better you can get while you're studying for the MCAT or the DAT or the O to the PCAT. Also, don't stay discouraged, and you might notice that stay there is both underlined and bolded because you're going to get discouraged. And now that I've told you it's going to happen, and you're probably going to cry. I don't care if you're a girl or a guy, you're probably going to cry, and more than once. And if you don't, you're just not normal. It's going to happen, but don't stay there. You know it's going to happen. I've warned you it's going to happen. And now that you know it's normal for it to happen, pick yourself up, get back up, and have some more fun. And when you get discouraged again, do the same thing. Finally, consider a study buddy. And a study buddy is a great way to kind of, get some encouragement as well. And somebody just to cry with on a regular basis as well. But definitely don't overdo it on a study buddy. Studying on your own is still going to be the biggest and most productive form of studying you can do. If you find somebody you're a little too social with, that's probably not a great idea. And even somebody you're not too social with, if you spend too much time there, again, productivity just has a way of going down. So, but definitely helpful if you can get a study buddy. And I realize for you guys as online students, that's not always the easiest thing, but in today's, in this day and age, it's so much easier than it was 10 years ago. And again, have a highly structured study plan. And I've hit this already, so I'm not going to harp on it again. One thing I did want to do, though, is I put the link down there that shows where you can get access to either the free or discounted Princeton Review resources. So those are there. Super helpful. Like I said, tons of students on campus are using those, and I hope you guys online are taking advantage of that as well. Couple other last little keys. The week of the test, a couple key things to do. I would highly recommend even driving down to your testing center before the actual test day. Just familiarize yourself with it, find out where you're supposed to do parking. Especially if you're taking a test in some kind of urban area in a downtown area. If you don't go down there already knowing where you're supposed to park and things of this sort, you're just adding a little more stress to an already very stressful day. So figure that out before your actual test day. Also, take it easy the day before your exam. This doesn't mean you don't study at all necessarily, although it very well could. I don't think it's a bad idea not to study that day. But keep yourself distracted as well. Watch a real cerebral movie that you love or something like this. But just to get yourself not thinking about the big test the next day. So take it easy. Maybe just review a few flashcards or something like that on some topics. Go through the hormones. I don't know. But definitely don't go crazy the day before your exam. You want to be refreshed and well-rested, ready to go for exam day. You might have everything ready the night before your exam day. That includes maybe even just laying out your clothes, and definitely have your ID ready and out and ready to go. You don't want to get all the way down to the testing center and realize that you don't have your ID on you. And that has happened. Also dress in layers. Some testing centers are too warm, some are too cold. And if you dress in layers, you can be prepared for cold climates in a testing center, but also peel some layers off if you need to. Cool. And that was the extent of what I had for you there.
Thank you for that. I should let you start with that first. I apologize.
Oh, no, that's totally cool.
Something I was thinking about as you were going through your presentation is what do you say to students who come in and are just struggling with the concepts? Like they have the skills, they have the chops, they know how to do it, but they have a block about whether or not they're going to be able to apply it.
So, it depends. And, if they come in and have some time to actually spend in the tutoring center, then we'll just go through some concepts, right? And then we'll get some application right after. We keep all the textbooks on hand in the tutoring center and stuff like this. But I also, everybody in this day and age has a phone or a laptop or a tablet or something like this. And we can pull up Chad's reviews and go right through some quizzes and stuff like that. Or we can go to Dr. Gould's site and go through some OChem quizzes right then and there. But the big thing is to bite off just one topic at a time and then immediately put it to use, put it to practice. Spaced repetition is super helpful as well. If you can answer a question right after you just listen to a lecture on it, great. That means you might understand that concept, but it doesn't mean you're going to retain it though either. And so you probably want to revisit that same quiz or some quiz on similar questions within the next couple of days or a week, even a week down the road, just to make sure, yeah, I really learned this and I actually own the material. I retained it.
Good advice. I think you talked about a little bit of isolation in the online programs, and that is definitely something that can be a struggle, particularly with science courses that don't even have the same peer-to-peer interactions that sometimes is required with discussion boards. As much as that it can be a forced interaction, it is still an interaction.
Sure.
It's one of the reasons we created this group, actually, is to connect students.
Well, let me ask you a question in that regard. One of the biggest reasons I was contemplating changing my platform for Chad's reviews is not the app, actually. I think that's a great little plus and stuff like that. But the platform I'm looking at has built-in discussion areas. And the nice thing about it is you can set them up for a specific course, but also you can actually enable a functionality where students can then set up their own study groups. They can allow certain people to come in and exclude others. It's totally up to them. They don't have to include instructors at all and things of this sort. And so do you think that's worth exploring, or nah, not so much? We have enough functionality with Canvas and other things and things of that sort. Just opinions.
There's a lot of interest in study groups, and there are a lot of study groups that pop up on Facebook run by students. Actually, as a club, we considered doing something similar. However, when you form the group, there's an issue of academic integrity, and the club cannot be responsible for maintaining it. So is there an interest in the type of chats that you're talking about? Absolutely. It can be hard though, because
your club can't be responsible for.
Right. Well, and the other thing I would say to that is that one of the reasons that we were able to create this club pretty quickly is that a lot of us knew each other because we got to know what kind of students we were, and we trusted each other to be able to work together and maintain academic integrity, and that is difficult sometimes. So I personally am always hesitant to joining groups, because if I'm involved, I am involved, to say it politely, and it can be difficult. But as far as beyond that limitation of all that, there's tremendous value in being able to work with your peers, and in a less formal way than on a discussion board, where students are worried if they put something up that's factually inaccurate or they make a dumb mistake, because it happens. And it can be easier to do with a group of 10 people that you've gotten to know already, and you've all embarrassed yourselves in front of each other already. But I'm sure there's more people who have input there.
Well, honestly, Canvas is not discussion friendly at all.
Dr. Austin would agree with you.
Yeah, I preferred Piazza to the discussion board on Canvas, which is saying a lot, because Piazza is very antiquated looking, aside from just functionality. It's kind of meh. Okay. But Canvas just drives me batty anytime I get a notification email saying that there's a new discussion comment, I dread going and digging through the other comments for it. So something like that would be incredibly beneficial, I think. And like Ellie was saying, just kind of like interacting with kind of people in your circle, in your niche, so to speak.
We don't have the equivalent of leaving class and going to the library for an hour. This is as close as we can get.
Mm-hmm. And I also think there's a need to get away from Facebook as well, because a lot of people aren't on Facebook. I didn't have Facebook until OChem, so I wanted to be in Dr. World's Facebook group, and that, so.
And that would be, the advantage is if you signed up for Chad's reviews, you'd automatically have access to discussion groups, or you could form your own and things of this sort. And so, okay, cool.
Okay, plea from the students though. A user-friendly equation editor would be amazing, because currently pretty much every class has a different format for it, and we have to learn it over every time. Some use LaTeX, some use Microsoft Equation Editor. WebWorks is its own thing for doing calculus. Mastering Physics has its own way of entering. Alex, Mastering Chemistry, they're all different. They have pros and cons, but that I personally have found, and also with talking to students, that can make the difference on whether a student asks their question, is whether or not they feel like they are going to be able to type it out in a way that makes sense.
I actually have gone through half a dozen platforms, and one of the simple things I wanted, and even before an equation editor, I just wanted the ability to do a superscript or a subscript. And I found, two that I just tossed out right off the bat, because I didn't have the option of just doing a superscript or a subscript, or even formatting bold, italic, underline, nothing. And I was like, well, that's not going to be very helpful. Obviously with chemistry formulas and stuff like that, just having a superscript or a subscript is helpful. Also, if they don't let me post images, even if I don't have a good equation editor, I can pick a quick snipping tool and take a snapshot of the equation and just stick it right into a post, and things of that sort. So cool. I will totally keep that in mind.
Interest, yes. Need, yes. I do think that there's a lot of room there to fill a need that right now students are just kind of trying to patchwork themselves, as well as the instructors. I will definitely give them credit that ASU is trying to find good platforms. Yellow Dig is actually, personally, I was impressed by it because it has LaTeX built into it. So even though the format of the discussion is a little clunky and it can kind of be hard and things get lost, the ability to, like you said, just put in an image or put in like the LaTeX formula makes a difference.
Well, that's one thing. Obviously, if I create areas for discussions and stuff like that on a new platform and stuff, I have to figure out, okay, how much time do I have to get involved myself? And one of the nice things I figure is that in some ways this will be an area for you guys to interact as well. But I definitely want to be able to help manage the discussion boards as well and things of that sort. And I may even hire somebody to give me a little hand. So.
The degree to which that you are attuned to student needs is impressive. And as students, we appreciate it, and we can tell the difference of the people that are involved in creating content and seem to have an idea of the student experience. It's appreciated.
Well, you guys definitely, I will say, you guys got some phenomenal professors, and from Dr. Cabrak to Dr. Austin to Dr. Gould. I mean, you guys really, and I'll say this in general, like the SMS department in general, even on campus, online, whatever, they're phenomenal. They really are. And I know that not every professor is a 10 and things of that sort, but like it's phenomenal. And obviously you guys get to see some professors from other departments and stuff too. And I'm not saying that other, departments are horrible by any stretch. I'm just saying the chemistry department really bends over backwards to really give, excellent instruction, and they really reward lecturers and professors who are doing a decent job and make sure they're in appropriate positions and stuff. So, they really are trying, and definitely with you guys as online students, like I said, next semester, we're going to try a Slack channel. And if that's not the solution, then we'll go to the next thing, and we'll keep trying and making sure you guys have some, some quality resources too.
It's impressive because it's not just the professors, which they already are putting very high level professors for the online program as far as the student perception, but it's creating content that can bridge that can take what the professors have to offer and creating it in a way that the online students are able to receive it and able to learn effectively. And it's impressive how it's all coming together. We have another question. Do
Sure.
you have a favorite subject, both to teach and to learn and read about personally?
To learn and read about personally. My wife is a chemist. I'm going to put that out there. And I once had a student ask me, so like, do you guys just talk about chemistry all the time? And I was like, actually, we hardly ever talk about chemistry. She did chemistry all day and I did chemistry all day. And so when we were together, we definitely didn't talk about chemistry most of the time. And, but as far as a subject, I actually really like teaching general chemistry. It's my personal favorite. And it's not that I don't enjoy the others, but I just really enjoy general chemistry. Now, as a student, I actually just really enjoy biochemistry. I think it's just fascinating. I think, that our cells are these little cities, and just the amount of complexity and what's going on. And it's amazing. It's just mind boggling what's going on at that, atomic and molecular level. So I, from a student perspective, I just think that's just the best thing ever. But teaching wise, it's definitely general chemistry.
Another question for you, which is, do you currently, or do you have plans for student outreach for your programs? Because I think all of us here heard it as word of mouth from other students, could probably have benefited from knowing about these resources sooner.
That's a great question. And, it's one of those things that, this is something I just kind of took on myself, completely independent of ASU. And so promoting it's a little bit of funky thing. And, I don't want to give any of the impression, oh, I'm profiting from this because I'm not, but also, so it's really weird for me to try and promote this in a sense as well, in any kind of formal way. And I'll tell students all day long, and I'll, if professor wants to share it, I'm all happy about it. But at the same time, I'm not going to be like, hey, you should share this with your students. But also some professors would take it as an insult, right? Be like, hey, they'll take it as, so you're saying I can't connect with my students, and so that you need me to share your resources because you can, and I just definitely don't want to step on anybody's toes and things of that sort either. So, so from an outreach perspective, I feel like my hands are tied sometimes and stuff like that, and I'm not really sure the best way to go about that and stuff. But looking at some things next semester with like the Slack channel of maybe embedding all the videos as part of the Slack channel or something like this. I don't know. It's definitely the kind of thing where I get a lot of students who are like, oh, I didn't even know you had videos and things of this sort. And I definitely wish they'd find that out a little sooner. But like I said, I don't want to step on anybody's toes either. So.
Sounds a little bit like a difficult balance there. So the students will just continue to talk about you to the other students.
Excellent.
Speaking of which, are you aware that you have a stellar Rate My Professor review?
Which is weird because, like I said, I taught a little, introductory Chem 191 course for incoming freshmen. It wasn't really a chemistry course per se. So I find it interesting that I have any ratings on Rate My Professor, actually. So
there are quite a few students who credit you for their success, but also like just getting through the courses. And I understand what you're saying about the professors, and it's complicated, but people do learn differently.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's like I said, and even in the chemistry department, especially, we've got professors who just like, oh yeah, if somebody else if I can get access to somebody else who explains something from a different angle or something like that, all power to it. And they're really all about the students and stuff like that. But, there are professors out there though too, that, are just going to take it a little more personally and stuff like that. So.
Well, and they create content, or they're given content for a course, and it's meant to be all inclusive, and what they teach you, they know they taught you. So the assumption is then they can guarantee that you'll be able to follow through with it. But in reality, your videos have high value.
Awesome.
We have a question from Lindsay. She says, some of us are switching over to science courses from previous humanities majors. How can we improve our science math minds, like you were talking about for reading comprehension?
Well, that's a super interesting question, Lindsay. And the reason that's super interesting is that if you look at the MCAT specifically, there's a CARS section, which is really a reading comprehension section. And humanities majors tend to do better on it than science majors. So that's the first thing. And even beyond this, the biology section, which they don't really call biology anymore, but the biology section of the MCAT is so reading comprehension based that humanities majors on average do better than biology majors. So one, don't diss the humanities background that you have. You're going to find it super helpful. Now, in terms of, some of the analytical thinking and stuff like that, that's going to be the harder part. Uh, and I would just say it's going to come with time. It is something you'll develop, but do a ton of practice. And I'm confident that, the more practice you do, the more you'll kind of get that analytical mindset and stuff like that. But the truth is you already have a huge advantage over a lot of the science majors.
You guys should feel free to unmute as well if you'd like to ask your question, David. He wrote, maybe you can answer, okay, if you can't. I was just looking at an application page for med school, and they want 12 to 15 mission-based experiences. I am 38 and I'm not going to be able to have the traditional experiences, but I feel I have life experiences that are going to be just as valuable. How can I market my experiences to make myself a competitive candidate?
Cool, great question. And obviously, a couple different things. So one, you want to make sure all your other ducks are in a row. You want to make sure that your GPA is not going to hold you back, that your MCAT score is not going to hold you back. And the biggest thing is, a lot of students think that their MCAT score, their GPA is what gets them into med school. And it is definitely not what gets you into med school. It'll keep you out of med school, but it won't get you into med school. And the biggest thing is it gets your foot in the door so you can make it to an interview. And that's what you want to do, is you want to get as far as getting to that interview. So when you write your personal statement, throw all of your personal experience and life experience into that. Throw your motivation for wanting to go into medicine and stuff like that into that. Also make sure you get phenomenal letters of recommendation. Those will go a long way as well. And then get to the interview and blow them away. Personal experience and life experience counts for a ton. And so, you'll find that not every med school wants 12 to 15, mission-oriented activities and stuff like this. You'll find that some have more of a research bent and some have more of a teaching bent. And, so also just know that that is not the case at every single med school you're going to apply to and stuff like that. So, some really are all about the, the mission stuff like that. And I don't know if this particular one's the case or not. Usually you can kind of get an idea of scouring their website, what their focus is and stuff like that. And just make sure when you do apply that you apply to some schools that's not such a huge focus for them. And definitely apply liberally. Students will ask me, how many schools should I apply to? And the truth is more than one and less than 100. But on average, I'd say students probably apply in the 12 to 15 range. And you definitely want to shoot for the moon on a couple schools that you think are probably, you'd really love to go there, but you're probably not going to get in. Hit a couple schools that you think, probably if you're going to get in somewhere, it's probably those two schools. And then hit another 10 schools or so that you think you're probably somewhat competitive for getting into and stuff like that. That way you kind of got a backup plan, but you're also shooting for the moon on a couple and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Totally welcome.
Are there any more questions? You guys can unmute or add them to the chat. Chad, is there anything else you wanted to go over?
I don't have anything off the top of my head, and I'm happy to answer your questions. But like I said, I didn't know exactly what to prepare. I wanted to show you guys what resource I had available and stuff, but also maybe just generically, how to prep for an admissions test and stuff like that. But if there's anything else you guys want to hear, I'm all happy to answer those questions.
You said a few times as you were going through your presentation, I don't want to plug too much. I just wanted to let you know this was here. Valuable resource that you have. And if there was no plugging or no student conversation, we wouldn't know about it and this whole meeting wouldn't be happening. So I don't underestimate the impact that it has for the online students.
Awesome.
Because we don't have the ability to just go into a classroom and say, hey, I don't understand this concept, or the exact way that it was stated in the 2-minute lecture didn't click for me. What do I do now? And that's where Chad's reviews can come in.
Can I ask you guys a question? So, obviously there's Khan Academies out there and a variety of other online resources. And obviously, as an online student, you guys have access to things that just didn't even exist 10 years ago. And being an online student 10 years ago was definitely a very different experience than what you guys are experiencing. are there other resources you guys do find valuable, like Khan Academy and things of this sort? And obviously, you know, I can't ask, you know, you generically and obviously, but you guys as individuals, anybody have any recommendations?
Well, Khan Academy is good for a lot of things. I found it more helpful for math specifically. You know, it was okay for physics, I guess, but it doesn't have you do a lot of example problems, and those are lacking on other
Okay.
resources that I've found. So that's one of your biggest strengths, I think, is that there's examples to go through. And I haven't really used much else.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
I've used some YouTube channels, and I'm blanking now on the names in particular, but there were a couple for physics, a couple for chemistry, a couple for OChem. For me, the combination of having your worksheets to go along through with the videos, and it was very concise. I never felt like I was wasting time going through your material. There wasn't excess talking. You didn't talk around a subject and to get to it. It was very progressive through the concepts. It was very intentional, the material that you keep and the material that you cover. And it was an effective use of my time for studying. It also, I found that I understood the way you explain concepts really well. And so for me, it was a reliable resource, whereas sometimes with Khan Academy or sometimes with some of the YouTube presenters, you watch it and you're like, this one, you're like, oh, I like how he taught this, but that doesn't make sense to me, or this and that, and you're not sure. Whereas I found that your content was reliably helpful.
And I think it helps that it's ASU specific. So I can't speak to that too much because sometimes other resources will go over a bunch of things that we're not even going to touch. So what you're looking for gets bogged down. So.
And in little ways too. Well, they're not little, but can be easy. So like for for physics, trying to find physics explanations, and you'll have people giving calculus explanations, which is like great as a concept because oftentimes calculus is a more effective way to explain it, but doesn't match up with the coursework that we're taking.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing is, you know, physics is usually taught either from an algebra-based perspective or a calculus-based perspective. And I definitely designed mine to be the algebra-based, but my hope is someday when I have all this free time to also, you know, reproduce a set for the calculus-based as well. But that is way down my to-do list.
Yeah, the calculus, I think for online students, I don't think calculus-based physics is an option.
Okay, not even there yet. Yeah.
So it is, but you'd have to take Calc 3 to take the second portion of physics. So
it's the 121.
It is if you want to take Calc 3, which that's not in my degree plan, so I don't want to take Calc 3.
I don't fault you there at all.
Yeah, Calc 2 made me want to curl up in a ball and cry slightly already, so we'll just stay away from the 3 and all that. Lindsay said in the chat, Professor Leonard, and I've heard good things about him. Speaking of calculus, I took Calc 2 after ASU was lovely and they gave me credit for Calc 1, but Calc 1 I took as a junior in high school, which was like 11 years ago. So I spent a long time on Khan Academy listening to Sal go over Calc 1, and I think that's the only reason that I was able to be successful in Calc 2. But I haven't, like Sam said, I'm not a huge fan of Khan for like the sciences. It was great for math, but for whatever reason, I don't know, the science stuff, it just doesn't do it for me.
Okay. I will say that I'm a big fan of Professor Leonard's as well. So he has a Patreon channel. I give him a little money every month, and I'm not even using his videos. I just think he's phenomenal, and I think he should just keep making more stuff. So any of you guys who have benefited from him, he has a great Patreon channel, and show him some love.
David Reed wrote, my biggest resource for Calc 1 and 2 was Mathway.
Mathway? Okay. So I'm actually, one of the things I want to make is a big conglomeration of resource pages for some of the different disciplines. And so that's why I'm asking you guys these as well. I'm working on some resource pages and things of the sort. So
I used Patrick JMT on YouTube for calculus and a little bit for physics.
Okay.
He had more of the inclined plane with friction examples with the blocks, and I just probably could have even used more than what I had.
Yeah, there's not a lot of reliable resources for physics, just because it's too split with algebra and calculus. So I didn't find anything that was super helpful in one place.
So one of the things that you guys don't yet have that my Chad's Prep students do is I've got a 500 or 600 practice questions for physics that'll eventually make their way onto Chad's reviews as well. But next summer is when I will begin making the screen recorded video solutions for all those questions as well. And I think those will be super helpful. So students can just be like, well, how do I do a problem where there's 3-point charges and I want to find out how much potential energy, things of a sort. And so if they can see it worked out instead of just a written solution. But that's one of those activities where I spend, 12 hours a day in my office and get pretty cabin fever. And by the time that too many days like that, August rolls around, I'm like, let's go back to the tutoring center. That'd be fantastic. So, but I know I find them really helpful. So
That's quite an undertaking on your end to do all that. The other thing that people have talked about for calculus is like Symbolab or Wolfram Alpha is another one.
Okay, I've used Wolfram Alpha myself.
Yeah, Symbolab is actually, well, it's free for one, which makes a difference. I started with Wolfram Alpha as well. It also has a little bit more of a user-friendly text entry for the formulas.
Symbolab?
Yeah.
Yeah, I paid for them during Calc 2 because there were some, like if I got on a practice problem that I was just totally stuck on, it was good because you have to pay for it, but it breaks it down more into the different steps. And it does obviously like even between Khan and then the way that, what's Jay Abramson? That's the professor's name who does the recordings. Even the way that he teaches versus Khan versus the way Symbolab breaks it down, there are some discrepancies sometimes that can get a bit confusing, but Symbolab was really useful and they have an app. So I could take it with me anywhere.
One of the things that I liked about using Symbolab or the Wolfram Alpha just as concepts, and I realize that those both are for calculus in this example, but just in general, is that it'll give you the answer, but the more valuable thing is the step-by-step explanation, including the fact that you can choose to reveal the steps as you go, meaning you don't have to just all of a sudden be told how to solve it, but you can work through one part, get stuck, get help with just that, and then continue to approach it on your own. Don't know if that's a format that you can include as well with like some of the chemistry or the physics, but some of those problems that are really lengthy that involve combining multiple topics, it's a way for students to be able to find where they have a weakness instead of just getting stuck on one part and not getting to test their own ability to apply the other aspects of that concept.
Okay.
It's really easy for me to just say, hey, how about this? And then you have to, but thank you, Chad.
You are totally welcome.
You have a bit of a legacy with the online students, and we are very grateful that you came to speak with us as well.
I'm totally happy that you guys found it helpful. Like I said at the beginning of this conversation, it's like, so how many guys do you think are even using it and stuff? And I really had no way to gauge it and stuff. So I'm super happy people are using it.
I mean, you've been memed in study groups.
Hashtags have been created.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, one of the reviews of you on Rate My Professors calls you the king of Gen Chem, the minister of biochem, the savior of OChem, and the duke of physics.
That is special. All right.
Take that for what you will.
I don't know where it was made, but one of my favorite comments was, Chad could teach chemistry to your dog or something like that. I was like, okay.
I mean, you could get to a point when you're with the material that is supposed to be teaching you the concepts. You're just lost. You know you're a good student. You know you can learn it. You know other people have learned it, but you have no idea what you're doing. So being able to switch over to a 3-minute video that clears it up and makes you feel like you're capable of learning, it's powerful.
Awesome.
Baja is asking, do you have, let's see, how to succeed and manage exams that are different than courses or lecture material? I'm guessing that that is advice for when you find yourself in a unprepared.
Yeah, that is difficult, and hopefully, a professor is going to test you on something they've led you to believe is important for the course. And, so if you're finding your exams that just are very different than the course or what you've been lectured on and stuff like that, one of the most helpful things is just finding problems from another source, or multiple sources out there and stuff like that, So if it's one of those things, like I would go into your first exam just assuming that it's going to be on stuff your professor has covered and has let you know is important, either through things they've said during lectures or what they've tested you on in quizzes and homeworks and stuff like that. But if that ends up not being the case come your first exam, you definitely need to get started on finding some other resources for practice materials. There's just a plethora of stuff out there, and the hard part right now is sifting through some of that stuff and finding is this any good? Is this any good? That's one of the reasons I want to make a resource page. Is just to sift through some of that stuff and let students know, yes, this is good, and things of that sort. So, but definitely find some other sources of practice materials besides just what your professor is releasing. Would be my best recommendation.
Can send you an email as well with the resources that have been discussed within ideas and within some of our study groups that we've already gone over, just from the student perspective, if that's helpful for you as you're gathering things.
Okay, cool. Yeah, totally helpful.
The other thing I wanted to say is you were talking about that you have, I believe it was physics you were talking about, practice problems on Chad's prep that you're working on putting on Chad's reviews.
I do, yeah.
I do know students who have paid for Chad's prep for those practice problems.
That is a shame because they're going to be free next year. I'm sorry.
Yes, well, when you're currently enrolled in physics and you can pay to get them, we're already paying so much for classes.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully then you also saw that, I'm trying to make things as affordable as possible. It's like $10 a month or $25 for a semester's access and stuff like that. And, you talked about, some students don't even get to hear about it. And I've had this big struggle with, I can make things more expensive and then I can afford to advertise a little better and stuff like this. But I'm like, then I'd have to make them more expensive. And, so I think I'm going to just try and keep them cheap and find ways to incentivize students to actually share it or something. I don't know. But I definitely want them to be as accessible as possible and things of the sort. So.
Yeah, it's valuable. Are there any more questions? We have thoroughly covered our list of topics for you tonight.
Mm-hmm. We really
Awesome.
appreciate this.
Awesome. Oh, you guys are totally welcome. Happy to do it.
I also appreciate you saving my my physics grade.
You are very welcome. I find it interesting because obviously I'm not. I've had 2 semesters of physics myself, and started helping students, prep for the MCAT and stuff like that, and just got into teaching physics. And I super enjoy the material.
It comes through.
Yeah, I never took physics. Well, I guess I technically did. I was a communications electronics technician in the Marine Corps, so I guess I did take physics as it turns out, but I didn't know I was taking physics. But a lot of the stuff was very new to me, and so it was helpful, like Ellie said, that you convey it. A lot of the professors talk like they're talking to somebody who's a grad student maybe, or who's done a bunch of research. They're talking to a peer maybe, but it was a lot more understandable, and I no longer had to curl in a corner and cry for that class, at least. So.
How old is your newborn, by the way?
She is 2.5 weeks old.
Nice. Congrats.
She is brand new. Thank you. She's my last, so sucking it in while I can.
I've got a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I'm pretty sure we're done. So I don't think we're going to get to experience that yet again. But it is a special time, but also an exhausting time. So good for you, Nicola.
Yeah, I am. I'm a little tired, but I use like 3 a.m. Wake ups to just get on my coursework. So that's the benefits of being an online student, I suppose. There is that I can hop on the internet whenever she's awake at ungodly hours.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Chad.
You are totally welcome.
Have a good night.
You guys do the same.